The auction block beneath Lily Dawson's feet was rough and splintered, and she could feel every jagged edge through the thin soles of her worn boots as she stood in the blazing Wyoming sun of 1876, hands bound with coarse rope that had already rubbed her wrists raw. She had thought coming west meant freedom, a new life away from the grinding poverty of Philadelphia, but the wagon master who had promised her honest work as a cook had sold her contract to pay his gambling debts the moment they reached Fort Bridger, and now she stood before a crowd of strange men who looked at her like she was livestock. "Healthy girl, strong back, good for cooking and cleaning," the auctioneer barked, his voice carrying across the dusty street. "Contracts for 5 years of service. Who'll start the bidding?" Lily's throat tightened as she scanned the faces below her. Most of the men looked weathered and hard, their expressions ranging from calculating to something that made her stomach turn. She had heard stories about what happened to contract workers in the territories, especially women. The law might call it indentured servitude, but she knew the truth. For 5 years, whoever bought her contract would own her time, her labor, and if they were cruel enough, much more than that. $50, called a man with a scraggly beard and clothes that looked like they had not been washed in months. 60, countered another, this one wearing a suit that seemed too fine for Fort Bridger's rough streets. Lily forced herself to stand straight, refusing to let them see her fear. Her mother had always said that dignity was the one thing no one could take from you unless you gave it away. Even here, even now, she would not give it away. 75, came a new voice, different from the others. It was deeper, quieter, but it carried a natural authority that made several men in the crowd turn to look. Lily's eyes found the speaker and her breath caught. He was tall, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that brushed his collar and eyes the color of a summer storm. Unlike many of the other bidders, his clothes were clean, practical ranch, where that spoke of honest work rather than either poverty or pretension. He stood with his thumbs hooked in his belt, watching the auctioneer with an expression she could not quite read. 80, the well-dressed man countered, his tone sharp with irritation. The tall cowboy did not hesitate. $100. A murmur ran through the crowd. It was more than most contract laborers went for, especially out here where money was scarce and work was hard to come by. The auctioneer's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. $100 from Mr. Jensen. Anyone willing to go higher? The well-dressed man opened his mouth, then seemed to reconsider as he got a better look at the cowboy who had just bid. Something in the younger man's stance, or perhaps in his steady gaze, made the suited man shake his head and step back into the crowd. Sold to Archer Jensen for $100. Lily's knees nearly buckled with relief and terror all at once. She had no idea who Archer Jensen was or what kind of man he might be, but at least he looked clean, and his eyes, when they met hers briefly, did not hold the predatory gleam she had seen in some of the others. The auctioneer gestured impatiently. "Come on down, girl. Mr. Jensen will settle the paperwork." Rough hands helped her down from the platform, though helped was perhaps too generous a word for the way she was shoved toward the small office where contracts were finalized. Archer Jensen followed, his boots making solid sounds on the wooden boardwalk. Up close, he was even taller than she had thought, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that came from real work rather than just natural build. Inside the dim office, the auctioneer spread the contract papers across a scarred desk. "Just need your signature here, Mr. Jensen, and the payment. Then the girl's yours for 5 years of labor." Archer pulled a leather pouch from his jacket and counted out the money in gold coins and bills, his movements deliberate and careful. Then he picked up the pen, dipped it in ink, and paused over the signature line. "This contract," he said slowly, his eyes scanning the dense text, "it says the holder has rights to the contracted party's labor, housing, and provision for 5 years." "That's right," the auctioneer agreed eagerly. "Standard territorial contract. And it can be terminated early by mutual agreement or by payment of the remaining value." The auctioneer's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "Well, yes, technically, but nobody ever actually does that. These girls work off their passage one way or another." Archer's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he signed his name with a firm hand. The moment the contract was official, the auctioneer produced a key and unlocked the rope binding Lily's wrists. The sudden freedom made her hands tingle as blood rushed back into them. "Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Jensen. Enjoy your purchase." The words made Lily's stomach clench, but Archer was already moving toward the door. "Come on," he said quietly to her. "We have a long ride ahead." She followed him out into the bright sunlight, rubbing her sore wrists. A beautiful paint horse was tied to the rail outside, along with a sturdy-looking mare. Archer untied both horses and handed the mare's reins to Lily. "You can ride?" he asked. "Yes," she managed, her voice hoarse from thirst and fear. "A little." He nodded and swung up onto his paint with the easy grace of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle. "There's water in the canteen on your saddle horn. Drink as much as you need. It's about 2 hours to the ranch." Lily mounted the mare carefully, her muscles protesting. The wagon journey west had been long and uncomfortable, but at least she had not had to ride. Still, she would not complain, not when she did not yet know what kind of master she had ended up with. They rode in silence through Fort Bridger's Main Street, past the trading post and the saloon and the small church that served the scattered community. Once they left town, the landscape opened up into rolling grassland dotted with sage and the distant purple shapes of mountains. It was beautiful in a vast, empty way that still felt foreign to Lily after growing up in Philadelphia's crowded streets. After about 20 minutes of riding, Archer finally spoke. "What's your name?" "Lily. Lily Dawson." "Lily," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "I'm Archer Jensen." "Most people call me Arch." "I know. The auctioneer said your name." Another stretch of silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves and the whisper of wind through the grass. Then Archer spoke again, his tone careful. "How did you end up on that auction block, if you don't mind me asking?" Lily considered not answering, but what did it matter now? "I needed work. A wagon master in Philadelphia said he needed a cook for the journey west and would pay fair wages. I thought it was my chance to start over, to maybe save enough to open my own boarding house someday. But when we got to Fort Bridger, he said I owed him for passage and sold my contract to cover his gambling debts." "That's illegal," Archer said flatly. "He can't sell someone into contract work without their consent." "Try telling that to the territorial judge," Lily replied, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "The wagon master had papers that said I had agreed to work off my passage. They were forged, but who's going to believe a girl from Philadelphia with no money and no connections?" Archer was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was hard. "A lot of things out here are not as civilized as folks back east might think. Law is supposed to protect people, but it does not always work that way, especially for those who can't afford lawyers or judges willing to listen." "I figured that out quickly enough." They rode on, and Lily tried to prepare herself mentally for whatever awaited at his ranch. She had heard stories about what happened to women in her position. Some were worked to exhaustion, treated worse than the livestock. Others faced different kinds of exploitation, the kind that made her skin crawl to think about. She had to hope that Archer Jensen was better than that, but hope had proven a dangerous thing lately. The sun was past its peak when they finally crested a rise, and Lily saw the ranch spread out in the valley below. It was not large by Wyoming standards, but it was clearly well maintained. A sturdy log house sat near a creek, with a barn, a corral, and several outbuildings arranged nearby. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastures, and she could see chickens scratching in a fenced yard near the house. "Welcome to the Circle J," Archer said. "It's not much, but it's honest work and honest land." As they rode down toward the buildings, a dog came bounding out to meet them, barking a welcome. Archer dismounted and rubbed the dog's ears affectionately. "This is Scout. He's friendly, so don't worry about him." Lily climbed down from her mare more slowly, her legs stiff from the ride. She stood uncertainly, not sure what was expected of her. Archer led both horses toward the barn. "Come on, I will show you around." The barn was clean and organized, with 4 stalls and a tack room that smelled of leather and hay. Archer showed her how he liked the horses brushed down and where the feed was kept, his explanations patient and clear. Then he led her to the chicken coop, the root cellar, and finally the house itself. The interior was simple but comfortable. A large main room served as both kitchen and living space, with a stone fireplace taking up most of one wall. There were 2 doors leading to what Lily assumed were bedrooms. "You will have the room on the left," Archer said, pushing open the door to reveal a small but clean space with a real bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "I know it is not fancy, but the mattress is good and there are extra blankets in the chest." Lily stared at the room, confused. "This is for me?" "Yes." Archer looked at her with something that might have been concern. "Did you expect something different?" "I expected a cot in the barn, if that," she admitted, "or maybe just a bedroll on the floor somewhere." His expression darkened. "I bought your contract, Lily, but I am not looking for a slave. I need help running this ranch, that is true. The work is hard and there is a lot of it, but you will have your own space, your own bed, and you will be treated with respect. Is that clear?" She did not know what to say. It seemed too good to be true, and everything in her experience had taught her that things that seemed too good to be true usually were. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why spend $100 on a contract if you are just going to treat me like hired help you have to house and feed?" Archer ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed born of frustration, though not with her. "Because I saw what some of those other men were planning, and I could not walk away and let that happen. Because my mother raised me to believe that how you treat people, when they have no power to stop you, says everything about who you really are. And because I do need help here, real help, but I want a partner in the work, not someone who is here against their will and will run the first chance they get." "A partner," Lily repeated slowly. "Yes, a partner. Someone who will work hard but who I will also work hard alongside. Someone who has a say in how things are done and who shares in the success when the ranch does well. That is what I am offering if you are willing." Lily felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had been carrying since the wagon master's betrayal. "And the contract is a piece of paper." "Legally binding, yes, but I meant what I asked the auctioneer about termination. If after a fair time you decide you would rather be somewhere else, we can talk about ending it early. I will not hold you against your will." He met her eyes steadily. "But I hope you will give this a real chance. I think we could do good work together." For the first time since arriving in Fort Bridger, Lily allowed herself to truly look at the man who had bought her contract. There was honesty in his face, in the straightforward way he spoke. He could have lied, could have told her sweet things just to keep her compliant, but instead he was laying out the situation plainly. "All right," she said finally. "I will give it a real chance." Archer's shoulders relaxed slightly, and she realized he had been genuinely worried about her answer. Good. Now you must be exhausted and hungry. There is bread and cheese in the cold box, and I can make coffee if you want it. Take some time to settle in, and we can talk more about the work routine over dinner." He left her alone in the small bedroom, closing the door quietly behind him. Lily sat on the edge of the bed, testing the mattress. It was indeed good, much better than the lumpy straw ticking she had slept on during the journey west. The sheets were clean and smelled of sunshine, as if they had been recently washed and dried on a line. She stood and went to the window, looking out at the unfamiliar landscape. The mountains in the distance were beginning to turn purple in the afternoon light, and the creek near the house caught the sun in flashes of silver. It was beautiful, she had to admit, in a wild way that still made her feel unmoored. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Archer opened the door partway, staying respectfully in the hall. "I forgot to mention, there is a bathing room with a copper tub through that door." He pointed to a second door she had not noticed in the corner of her room. "It connects to my room too, so we share it. I will make sure to knock before entering when you might be using it. Water has to be heated on the stove and carried in buckets, but if you want a bath tonight, I can help you get it ready." The thought of a real bath, of washing away the dust and fear and humiliation of the past few days, was almost overwhelming. "Thank you," she managed. "I would appreciate that very much. I will get started on heating the water then. Come out to the kitchen when you are ready." Over the next few hours, Lily learned that Archer was a man of his word. He heated bucket after bucket of water without complaint, carrying them to the tub and testing the temperature with the same care he might use for a valued guest. He showed her where the soap and towels were kept, then left her alone with an assurance that she should take all the time she needed. The hot water was heaven. Lily soaked until her skin was pink and pruned, scrubbing away not just the physical grime but some of the emotional weight she had been carrying. When she finally emerged, dressed in the clean shift she had found folded in the dresser, she felt more human than she had in weeks. Archer was cooking when she entered the main room. The smell of frying bacon and potatoes made her stomach growl audibly. He glanced over with a slight smile. "Feeling better?" "Much, thank you. Have a seat. This will be ready in a few minutes." Lily settled at the rough-hewn table and watched him work. He moved around the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who had been cooking for himself for a long time, no wasted motions or hesitation. It struck her as odd, this tall rancher who could bid $100 for a contract worker, but still cooked his own meals and carried bath water without complaint. "How long have you been running this ranch alone?" she asked. "About 2 years. My father started the Circle J, but he died of pneumonia the winter before last. My mother passed when I was 12, so it has just been me since then." He dished food onto 2 plates and brought them to the table. "That is part of why I needed help. One person can only do so much, and I have been letting things slip that I should not." They ate in companionable silence for a while. The food was simple but good, well seasoned and cooked properly. When Lily complimented him on it, Archer shrugged. "You learn to cook decently when the alternative is bad food every night. Though I will admit I am looking forward to having someone who actually knows what they are doing take over the kitchen." "You said you worked as a cook." "I did, for a boarding house in Philadelphia for 3 years. Before that, my mother taught me. She took in laundry and mending, and I helped her while learning to cook on the side." Lily hesitated, then decided honesty was fair given how honest Archer had been with her. "My parents both died of cholera 2 years ago. I had to leave our apartment because I could not afford the rent alone, and I had been trying to save enough to go west and start fresh. When the wagon master offered me a paying job for the journey, it seemed like providence. I should have known better." "You should not have to know better," Archer said firmly. "People should not take advantage of those in difficult circumstances. That is not your failing, it is his." Something about his matter-of-fact defense of her loosened another knot inside Lily. She was not used to people taking her side without question. After dinner, Archer showed her around the ranch properly, explaining the daily routines. The chickens needed feeding every morning and their eggs collected. The cattle needed checking regularly to make sure none had wandered or gotten into trouble. The horses needed care. The garden, now mostly gone to seed with the approach of fall, would need to be put to bed for winter and planned for spring. "I usually wake around dawn," he explained as they walked back toward the house in the gathering dusk. "But you do not have to keep the same schedule if you would rather sleep later. As long as the work gets done, I do not care much about the exact timing." "I am used to early mornings," Lily assured him. The boarding house started serving breakfast at 6. They reached the porch and Archer paused, his hand on the door. "I know this is all new and probably overwhelming. If you have questions or concerns, you can tell me. I would rather know if something is not working than have you stay silent and miserable." "I will," Lily promised. That night, lying in her comfortable bed in her own room, Lily stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had happened. This morning she had been on an auction block, terrified of what kind of master she would end up with. Tonight she was in a real bed in a room of her own, with a full stomach and a man who had called her his partner. It still felt too good to be true, but maybe, just maybe, fortune had finally turned in her favor. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that surprised Lily with its normality. She woke each morning to find Archer already up and moving, usually returning from checking on the animals with Scout at his heels. She would start breakfast while he did the heavier morning chores, and they would eat together as the sun rose fully over the mountains. The work was indeed hard, as Archer had warned, but it was also satisfying in a way Lily had never experienced in the city. There was something deeply rewarding about collecting warm eggs from the nests, about kneading bread dough and watching it rise, about seeing the neat rows of preserved vegetables lining the cellar shelves as she worked to put up the last of the garden's harvest. Archer was a good teacher, patient when she did not know how to do something and generous with his praise when she learned quickly. He taught her to read the weather in the clouds, to spot signs of sick cattle, to handle the horses with confidence. In turn, she improved the cooking significantly and brought order to the house that had clearly been lacking a woman's organizational touch. But more than the work, it was the small moments that began to change how Lily saw her situation. The way Archer always made sure she took breaks when the work was heavy. How he asked her opinion on decisions about the ranch and actually listened to her answers. The evening conversations over dinner that ranged from practical matters to stories about their different lives. His growing up on the Wyoming frontier and hers in Philadelphia's busy streets. One evening about a month after her arrival, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and gold. It had become a habit, this quiet time after the work was done, and before full dark sent them inside. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said. "Of course." "Why did you really buy my contract? I mean, I understand about needing help, but you could have hired someone normally. Why spend that money on a contract you are not even enforcing properly?" Archer was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the distant mountains. "My mother was not born in this country," he said finally. "She came from Norway when she was 16, alone, hoping to find work. A man offered her a contract similar to yours, promising honest work as a housekeeper. He lied. For 2 years he worked her half to death and treated her like property in every way that mattered." Lily's breath caught. "How did she get away?" my father. He was working on a neighboring ranch and saw how she was being treated. He reported it to the territorial marshal, but the law would not do anything without proof of actual crimes, and my mother was too afraid to testify. So my father saved every penny he could and bought out her contract himself. They married a year later, and he spent the rest of his life trying to make up for those 2 years she lost. "I am sorry," Lily said softly. She was happy in the end. They built this ranch together, had me, made a good life. But my father told me once that his biggest regret was not acting sooner, not standing up for her before things got as bad as they did. He made me promise that if I ever saw someone in that situation, I would not look away. Archer finally turned to look at Lily. "So when I saw you on that block, saw the kind of men bidding, I knew I had to do something. Maybe that makes me a fool for throwing money away, but I could not live with myself otherwise." "You are not a fool," Lily said firmly. "You are a good man, Archer Jensen, better than most I have known." Something shifted in the air between them, a new awareness that made Lily's heart beat faster. In the fading light, Archer's eyes were soft as he looked at her. "You have become more than just help around here," he said quietly. "I want you to know that. You are a friend, someone I value beyond just the work you do." "You have become important to me too," Lily admitted. "I did not expect that. I thought I would just keep my head down, do my work, and eventually move on. But now I cannot imagine not being here." They sat in the gathering darkness, the air between them charged with things unsaid. Lily was acutely aware of how close Archer was sitting, how easy it would be to reach out and touch his hand. But something held her back. Maybe fear, or maybe just the knowledge that once certain lines were crossed, there was no going back. As fall deepened into winter, the work on the ranch shifted. The cattle were brought closer to the buildings where they could be more easily fed and monitored. Wood had to be chopped and stacked for the long, cold months ahead. The house was prepared for winter storms, gaps chinked and shutters checked through it all. Lily and Archer worked side by side, their partnership deepening with each shared task. She learned to trust his strength when they moved heavy hay bales, and he learned to trust her judgment when she said a particular cow looked off and needed checking. They developed a shorthand of communication, able to work together smoothly with few words needed. But beneath the easy partnership, Lily was increasingly aware of other feelings growing. The way her heart lifted when she heard Archer's boots on the porch in the morning. How she found herself watching him work, admiring the capable way he handled the animals and the land. The warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled at something she said. She was falling in love with him. She realized one snowy December morning as she watched him struggle through knee-deep snow to reach the barn. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. She had no idea if he felt the same way, if his mentions of friendship and partnership meant he saw her as anything more than a valued worker and companion. The first real storm of winter hit in mid-December, a howling blizzard that kept them mostly inside for 3 days. They took turns making quick trips to the barn to care for the animals, but otherwise stayed in the warm house, keeping the fire high and playing cards or reading from Archer's small collection of books. On the second day, as wind shrieked around the corners of the house and snow piled against the windows, they sat together near the fire. Archer was mending a piece of tack, and Lily was knitting socks from wool she had carded and spun herself, a skill Archer's mother had apparently taught him and that he had passed on to Lily. "You miss Philadelphia?" Archer asked suddenly. Lily considered the question. "Sometimes I miss certain things. The convenience of shops nearby, the sound of lots of people around. But honestly, I do not miss it as much as I thought I would. I like the quiet here. I like being able to see the stars at night and knowing all the animals by sight." I like the work, even when it is hard. I am glad, Archer said. I have been worried sometimes that you might feel trapped here, especially as winter closes in. I do not feel trapped. Lily set down her knitting. Archer, I need you to understand something. When I first came here, I thought I was being sold into slavery in everything but name. I thought I would have to endure whatever you demanded of me and just survive until the contract ended. But you have given me something I never expected. You have given me respect and partnership, and a place that feels like home for the first time since my parents died. I stay here because I want to, not because a contract says I have to. Archer set aside the tack, his full attention on her. The contract does not matter to me anymore, Lily. If you wanted to leave tomorrow, I would not stop you. I would help you get wherever you wanted to go and make sure you had the money to start fresh. I do not want to leave, she said softly, unless you want me to. God, no. The words came out fierce and immediate. I cannot imagine this place without you now. These past months, having you here, it is like the ranch finally became a home instead of just a place I work and sleep. They were sitting close, the firelight casting warm shadows across both their faces. Lily could see the reflection of the flames in Archer's eyes as he looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Lily, he said, his voice rough. I need to tell you something, but I am afraid of making you uncomfortable or putting you in a position where you feel like you have to respond a certain way because of the contract, because of the power imbalance between us. There is no power imbalance, Lily interrupted. Not anymore. Maybe there was legally at first, but that is not how we have lived. You have made me your equal in every way that matters. Even so. Archer took a deep breath. I have feelings for you that go beyond partnership or friendship. Somewhere along the way, watching you bring life to this place, sharing meals and work and quiet evenings, I fell in love with you, completely and utterly in love. But I will not ask anything of you that you are not freely willing to give. If you do not feel the same, we can go on as we have been and I will not mention it again. Lily's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. You love me. I do. I think I have for weeks now, maybe longer. You are brave and kind and clever, and you make me laugh, and I cannot imagine my future without you in it. But I need you to know that you are under no obligation to return those feelings. Your place here is secure regardless. Joy flooded through Lily, bright and warm as summer sunshine. Archer Jensen, for such a smart man you can be remarkably blind. I have been in love with you since probably October, watching you work yourself to exhaustion to make sure everything was ready for winter, seeing how gentle you are with the animals, listening to you talk about your parents and this land you love. I just did not think I could say anything because I was afraid you only saw me as hired help. Hired help, Archer repeated, something like wonder in his voice. Lily, you stopped being hired help about a week after you arrived. You became essential. You became my partner. And then you became the person I loved most in this world. He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to, and cupped her face gently in his calloused hand. Can I kiss you, please? Lily whispered. The kiss was soft and sweet and perfect, tasting of the coffee they had shared and promising futures neither of them had dared to imagine. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. I want to do this right, Archer said. I want to court you properly, marry you if you will have me, build a real life together. But I do not want you to feel rushed or pressured. We have been building a life together for months already, Lily pointed out, unable to stop smiling. The courting part might be a little backwards, but I do not care about proper order. I care about you, about us, about what we can make together. They talked long into the night, the storm raging outside while they sat close by the fire and shared their hopes and dreams. Archer wanted to expand the ranch eventually, maybe get some sheep in addition to the cattle. Lily wanted to start a real garden in the spring, maybe even sell preserves and baked goods in town. Together, they planned a future that felt solid and real and full of possibility. When they finally went to their separate rooms in the early hours of the morning, it was with the understanding that nothing would be rushed, but everything had changed. They were no longer just partners in work, but partners in life, committed to building something lasting together. The rest of winter passed in a glow of newfound love. They were careful to maintain propriety, sleeping in separate rooms and keeping their physical affection limited to kisses and hand-holding, but the emotional intimacy between them deepened daily. They learned each other's dreams and fears, shared stories from their pasts, and made plans for their future. In late February, during a brief warm spell that hinted at the coming spring, Archer rode into town and came back with a simple gold band. That evening he got down on one knee in their kitchen and formally asked Lily to marry him. "I know we have been planning on it," he said, "but I wanted to do this properly. Lily Dawson, you are my partner, my equal, and the love of my life. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married in March at the small church in Fort Bridger, with the preacher's wife and the general store owner serving as witnesses. Lily wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself from fabric Archer had bought her as a courting gift, and Archer wore his best suit, his hair slicked back and his eyes shining with joy. The ceremony was brief, but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Archer kissed Lily with such tenderness that the preacher's wife dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief. They celebrated with a small dinner at the hotel restaurant, a rare extravagance that Archer insisted on. As they ate roast beef and potatoes and the best pie Lily had ever tasted, she could not stop looking at the ring on her finger and the man across from her who was now her husband. "What are you thinking?" Archer asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I am thinking about where I was a year ago, desperate and frightened and not knowing how I would survive. And now I am here, married to a good man with a home and a future. It feels like a miracle." "The miracle was finding you," Archer said. "Everything good in my life now traces back to that day in Fort Bridger when I saw you on that auction block and knew I could not walk away. You called me your partner that first day," Lily remembered. "Your equal. I did not believe you then. And now I know you meant every word. You have treated me as an equal from the beginning, even when you did not have to. That is when I started falling in love with you, I think. When I realized you saw me as a person, not property." They talked until the restaurant needed to close, then rode back to the ranch under a sky full of stars. Everything looked different to Lily now, touched with the golden glow of belonging. This was not just a place she worked anymore. It was home. It was her future. It was where she and Archer would build a life together. That night, as husband and wife, they finally shared a room and a bed. Archer was gentle and patient, and Lily discovered that physical love with someone you truly loved was nothing like the frightening act she had heard whispered about in dark terms. It was beautiful and intimate, and brought them even closer together. The next months were busy as they worked together to prepare for spring planting and calving season. Lily transformed the garden space, planting rows of vegetables and herbs and even some flowers, because she insisted a home needed beauty as well as utility. Archer built her raised beds and hauled manure to enrich the soil, and together they planted seeds and set out seedlings she had started in the sunny kitchen window. The cattle produced healthy calves, and Archer taught Lily how to help with the births when needed. though he insisted on handling the more difficult cases himself. She proved to have a knack for it, staying calm in stressful situations and having gentle hands that the animals responded well to. In early summer, the Territorial Land Office sent word that they were reviewing property claims in the area. Archer spent several anxious weeks gathering documentation to prove his ownership of the Circle J, worried that some technicality might threaten their home. Lily helped him organize years of scattered papers, her neat handwriting creating order from chaos as she compiled records of purchases and improvements. When the land agent finally arrived to inspect the property, he was a stern-faced man who asked probing questions about water rights and boundary markers. Lily served him coffee and fresh cake, while Archer walked him around the property lines, and she could see the tension in her husband's shoulders. But the agent was apparently satisfied with what he found. Before he left, he handed Archer an official certificate of ownership, properly recorded with the territorial government. "Everything appears in order, Mr. Jensen. You have a fine property here, and I can see you have been making good improvements. This should protect your claim against any future disputes." The relief on Archer's face when the agent rode away was palpable. He swept Lily up in his arms and spun her around, laughing. "It is really ours now, legally and completely ours." "It was always ours," Lily said, but she understood what he meant. There was security in having the papers that proved it. That night, they celebrated by opening a bottle of wine Archer's father had been saving for a special occasion. They sat on the porch in the warm summer evening, sipping wine and watching the stars come out. "I have been thinking," Lily said, "about the future, about what we want to build here." "What have you been thinking?" "I would like to have children someday, not right away necessarily, but someday. I want to fill this house with family and love and noise." She hesitated. "Is that something you want too?" Archer's hand tightened on hers. "I want that more than I can say. I used to think I would always be alone here, that my family line would end with me. But now, with you, I can imagine sons and daughters running around the ranch, learning to ride and plant and care for the land. I can imagine us growing old together, surrounded by children and maybe grandchildren. Yes, Lily, I want that very much." They made love that night with a new intentionality, both of them aware that they were no longer just celebrating their love, but potentially creating new life. The months that followed were golden. The garden produced abundantly, and Lily spent long days preserving vegetables and making jams and pickles. Archer's cattle herd grew, and he was able to sell some steers at good prices in town. They were not wealthy by any means, but they were comfortable, and the ranch was thriving. In late fall, Lily began to suspect she might be pregnant. She waited until she was sure before telling Archer, not wanting to raise his hopes only to disappoint him. But when she missed her courses for the third month in a row and began feeling queasy in the mornings, she knew. She told him one evening after dinner, simply taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly. "Sometime in late spring, I think." Archer's face went through a series of expressions, shock, joy, wonder, before settling on something that looked almost like reverence. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby. Are you happy?" Instead of answering, he pulled her close and kissed her thoroughly. When they finally broke apart, there were tears on his cheeks. "Happy does not begin to cover it. I am overwhelmed, I am terrified, I am more grateful than I have words for. You have given me everything, Lily. A home, a partner, love, and now a child. I do not know what I did to deserve all this, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it." "You are already worthy," Lily assured him. "You have been worthy from the day you saw a scared girl on an auction block and decided to treat her like a human being instead of property." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter. Archer was attentive to the point of being comical, insisting Lily rest frequently and trying to take on tasks he thought might be too strenuous for her. She had to remind him regularly that she was pregnant, not fragile, and that women had been working through pregnancy since the beginning of time. But his care came from love, so she tried to be patient with his hovering. And truthfully, as her belly grew and the baby became more active, she appreciated having him there to help with the heavier work. They prepared a nursery in a corner of their bedroom, building a cradle from pine wood that Archer sanded until it was smooth as silk. Lily sewed tiny clothes and blankets, marveling at how small everything was. The preacher's wife in town, who had become a friend over the months of Lily's marriage, shared advice and hand-me-down baby items. The baby came on a warm May morning, arriving after a labor that was long but not complicated. Archer stayed with Lily throughout, holding her hand and wiping her forehead and looking nearly as exhausted as she felt by the time their son finally entered the world. "A boy," the midwife announced, cleaning the squalling infant and handing him to Lily. "A fine, healthy boy." Lily looked down at the tiny red face and felt her heart expand to accommodate a love even bigger than what she felt for Archer. "Hello, little one," she whispered. Archer was crying openly, his hand gentle on his son's downy head. "He is perfect, absolutely perfect." They named him Samuel after Archer's father, with the middle name Thomas after Lily's father. Little Samuel Jensen became the center of their universe, his needs dictating their days and his small achievements bringing disproportionate joy. Archer proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with a crying baby at night so Lily could sleep, changing diapers without complaint, and talking to Samuel constantly even though the baby was far too young to understand the words. Watching him with their son, Lily fell in love with her husband all over again. The years that followed were full of hard work and simple joys. Samuel grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. The ranch continued to prosper, and they were able to make improvements. A larger barn, better fencing, even a small bunkhouse in case they ever needed to hire extra help during busy seasons. When Samuel was 3, Lily became pregnant again. This time they were less anxious, knowing what to expect. Their daughter arrived in autumn, a tiny thing with a surprising amount of blonde hair. "She looks like you," Archer said, cradling his daughter with the confidence of an experienced father. "Beautiful, just like her mother." They named her Rose, because Lily said she was as perfect and precious as the roses that were just starting to bloom in the garden Lily had expanded over the years. With 2 children, the house was indeed filled with the noise and chaos Lily had once imagined. There were tears and tantrums, but also laughter and wonder and moments of such pure sweetness that Lily sometimes had to stop what she was doing just to appreciate them. Samuel helped his father with ranch work, following Archer around like a devoted shadow and learning to care for the animals. Rose, as she grew, showed her mother's interest in growing things, helping in the garden with her small hands and delighting in collecting eggs from the chicken coop. One evening when Samuel was 7 and Rose was 4, the family sat together on the porch watching the sunset. It had become a tradition, this evening time when they gathered to enjoy the beauty of their land and each other's company. "Tell us the story again," Samuel asked. "About how you and Mama met." Lily and Archer exchanged glances. They had told the children an edited version of their meeting, leaving out the more troubling details of the auction and contract work. There would be time enough when they were older to understand the full truth. "Well," Archer began, "I went to town one day and I saw the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She needed help, and I needed someone to help me on the ranch, so it seemed like perfect timing. Was it love at first sight? Rose asked, romantic even at 4. Not quite at first sight, Lily said honestly, but close to it. Your father showed me kindness when I desperately needed it, and that kindness grew into friendship, and friendship grew into love. The best decision I ever made was bringing your mother home to the Circle J, Archer added, pulling Lily close against his side. Everything good in my life comes from that choice. Samuel leaned against his mother's other side, and Rose climbed into Lily's lap. They sat together as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in brilliant colors, a family built from courage and kindness and love. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Lily and Archer sat together by the fire. It was a rare, quiet moment, and they savored it. "Do you ever think about that day?" Lily asked. "The day you bought my contract." "Sometimes. I think about how easily things could have gone differently. If I had not been in town that day, if I had not had the money, if I had been less brave, or you had been less willing to trust me. So many things that had to align perfectly for us to end up here." "I used to think of it as the worst day of my life," Lily admitted. "Standing on that auction block, terrified of what would happen to me. But it was actually the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me. It brought me to you, to this life, to our children. I told you that first day that I wanted you to be my partner and my equal," Archer said. "I did not know then that I was also describing my future wife, the mother of my children, the person I would love more than my own life." "You also said eventually your love," Lily reminded him with a smile. "Though I do not think you actually said that part out loud that first day. I thought it, though, or hoped it at least. I saw you standing there, scared but unbroken, and I thought that this was someone special, someone worth knowing. I did not expect to fall in love quite so thoroughly, but I am grateful every day that I did." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling softly. Then Lily spoke again. "I want to do something with the money we have been saving. I have been thinking about this for a while." "What is it?" "I want to help other women who find themselves in situations like I was in. Women who come west looking for honest work but end up exploited or trapped. I do not know exactly what form it should take. Maybe some kind of fund to help buy out contracts, or a place they can stay while getting back on their feet. But I keep thinking about what could have happened to me if you had not been there, and I want to make sure other women have options." Archer was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I think that is a fine idea. My mother would have loved it, and it is a good use of our success, helping others the way I tried to help you." They spent the next weeks planning, talking to the preacher, and his wife and other trusted people in Fort Bridger about how to make Lily's idea a reality. Eventually, they established a small fund administered through the church, specifically designated to help women in difficult contract situations. It was not large enough to help everyone, but over the years it made a difference for several women who might otherwise have had no way out of exploitation. The years continued to pass, marked by the steady rhythm of ranch life. Samuel and Rose grew and were eventually joined by another brother, a surprise baby born when Lily was 35 and had thought their family was complete. They named him James, and he grew up adored by his older siblings. The ranch prospered. Archer proved to have a good head for business, making smart decisions about when to sell cattle and when to hold them, when to invest in improvements, and when to save. Lily's garden became locally famous, and she did indeed sell preserves and baked goods in town, building a small but steady additional income. More importantly, their love continued to grow. Even after years of marriage, Lily still felt a flutter of happiness when she heard Archer's step on the porch. He still looked at her sometimes with wonder in his eyes, as if he could not quite believe his good fortune. They still talked for hours, still laughed together, still supported each other through difficulties and celebrated successes together. They had their hard times too. There were years when the weather did not cooperate and the cattle did not thrive. There was the winter when Rose got desperately sick with fever, and they spent 3 terrifying days not knowing if she would recover. There were disagreements and misunderstandings and moments of frustration with each other or with their circumstances. But they worked through everything together, their partnership as strong as it had been from the beginning. Archer never pulled rank or tried to control Lily, and she never exploited his love to manipulate him. They were truly equals, making decisions together and respecting each other's strengths and opinions. As their children grew into teenagers, Lily and Archer began to talk about the future of the ranch. Samuel loved the land and the work and clearly wanted to take over the Circle J eventually. Rose had dreams of becoming a teacher and moving to a bigger town where there was a real school. James, still young, seemed to change his mind about what he wanted every week. "We will make sure they all have choices," Archer said. "Samuel can have the ranch if that is what he truly wants, but he needs to know he could do something else if he preferred. Rose should go to that teacher training school she has been talking about. James will figure out his path when he is ready." "We were both denied choices at various points in our lives," Lily said. "I want better for our children. We will give them better. We will give them the security to make their own decisions and the support to pursue their dreams, whatever those might be." They kept that promise. Samuel did eventually take over most of the ranch operations, though Archer continued to work alongside him for many years. Rose went to a teacher training program in Cheyenne and came back to teach at Fort Bridger's growing school. James discovered a talent for working with horses and began specializing in training, building a reputation that brought buyers from across Wyoming and beyond. Through all of it, Lily and Archer remained the steady center, the foundation on which their family was built. They celebrated marriages as their children found partners of their own, Samuel marrying a rancher's daughter who fit into the Circle J as if she had been born to it, Rose wedding a banker from town who supported her teaching career, James eventually marrying a woman who shared his passion for horses. Grandchildren arrived, and Lily discovered that the love she felt for them was different from but just as powerful as the love she had for her own children. She and Archer became the wise elders, offering advice when asked, but mostly just enjoying watching their family grow and thrive. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children organized a celebration at the ranch. The house that had once held just Lily and Archer was now filled with their children and grandchildren, with friends from town, with the life and love they had built together. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Lily and Archer found themselves alone on the porch, in the same spot where they had shared so many evening conversations over the years. 25 years, Lily said wonderingly. "It seems like yesterday and also like forever." "I would live them all again in a heartbeat," Archer said. "Every moment, good and bad, because they all led to this, to us, to our family, to this life we built." "I never imagined I could be this happy," Lily admitted. "That day on the auction block, I thought my life was over. I thought I was going to be a slave in everything but name, that I would spend years enduring and surviving and nothing more. I certainly never imagined love, partnership, a family of my own. I told you that first day that you would be my partner and my equal," Archer reminded her. "I meant it, even though I do not think either of us understood then just how deep that partnership would go. You also said eventually your love, though I think that was more hope than promise at the time." Archer laughed. "It was absolutely hope. Wild hope, actually, that this beautiful, brave woman might someday come to care for me the way I was already beginning to care for her. You made it easy to love you, Lily said. You treated me with respect and kindness from the start. You saw me as a person, not property. How could I not fall in love with that? They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and watching the stars come out. The sounds of their family settling down for the night drifted from the house, grandchildren being put to bed, their own children talking and laughing together. We did good, Archer said quietly. With this ranch, with our children, with the life we built, we did real good. We did, Lily agreed. And it all started with your choice to see me as human, to offer partnership instead of ownership. That changed everything. You changed everything. You took this lonely ranch and made it a home. You took a solitary cowboy and made him a husband and father. You took a hard life and filled it with love and laughter and purpose. More years passed, as they always do. Lily and Archer grew older, their hair turning gray and then white, their movements slower but their love undiminished. They eventually turned over the ranch entirely to Samuel. Though they continued to live in the house, they had made their own and help where they could. Archer's health began to fail when he was in his early 70s, his heart growing weaker despite his strong will. Lily cared for him tenderly, making sure he was comfortable and spending long hours just sitting with him and talking about their life together. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching yet another sunset, Archer spoke softly. I am not afraid of dying, you know. I have had a better life than I ever dreamed possible, but I hate the thought of leaving you. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she kept her voice steady. You will never really leave me. You are part of everything here, woven into this land and this family. Every sunset I watch will have you in it. Every time I hear Samuel talk to the cattle or watch Rose teach or see James work with a horse, I will see you in them. You are permanent, Archer Jensen, in all the ways that matter. Promise me you will keep living, he said. Really living, not just existing. You deserve joy and purpose and all the good things life can offer. I promise, she said, though her heart was breaking. But you have to promise to fight, to stay with me as long as you can. That is easy to promise. I would stay forever if I could. Archer lingered for another year, his good days outnumbering the bad for a while, then the balance slowly shifting. But even in decline, his mind remained sharp, and his love for Lily and their family burned bright. He died on a spring morning with Lily holding his hand, their children and many of their grandchildren gathered around. His last words were, "Best decision I ever made was bringing you home to the Circle J. I love you, Lily Jensen." "I love you too," Lily whispered. "Always and forever." The grief was crushing, a physical weight that made it hard to breathe. But Lily had promised to keep living, and she kept her promises. She threw herself into her family, helping with the grandchildren and the ranch work, and the garden that had become so much more than just a source of vegetables over the years. She lived for another decade after Archer's death, long enough to see great-grandchildren born, and the Circle J continue to thrive under Samuel's management. She told stories about their grandfather to the younger generations, making sure they knew about the man who had chosen kindness over profit, who had seen a frightened woman on an auction block and offered partnership instead of ownership. When Lily finally died peacefully in her sleep at 84, she was buried next to Archer on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The entire community came to the funeral, testament to the lives they had touched and the example they had set. At the gathering after the service, Samuel stood to speak about his mother. "My parents met in circumstances that should have led to hardship and pain," he said. "But instead, they chose to build something beautiful. My father chose to see my mother as an equal when the law would have allowed him to treat her as property. My mother chose to trust and eventually love a man who had every advantage over her. Together, they created not just a successful ranch, but a family built on respect and partnership and love." He paused, looking around at the gathered family and friends. That is their legacy. Not just this land or this house, but the example of how people should treat each other, with dignity, with kindness, with love. They taught us that circumstances do not determine destiny, that choices matter, that partnership and equality create stronger bonds than power and control ever could. Rose added her own memories, talking about how their mother had taught her to value herself and her abilities, how she had encouraged Rose's dreams even when they took her away from the ranch. "She knew what it was like to have her choices taken away," Rose said. "So she made sure we always had choices. That was her gift to us, born from her own hard experiences." James spoke about his father, about the man who had been strong but gentle, firm but fair. "He could have been a tyrant," James said. "The law and custom would have supported him in that. But he chose to be a partner instead. He chose to value people over power. That is the kind of man I try to be, the kind of man I hope my sons will be." As the sun set over the Circle J that evening, the family gathered on the porch that had been Lily and Archer's favorite spot. The house was full of their descendants, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their values forward into a new generation. Samuel stood with his arm around his wife, looking out at the land his parents had entrusted to him. "They would be proud," his wife said softly. "Look at all this, everything they built, everyone they loved, it continues." "It does," Samuel agreed, "and it will continue as long as we remember what they taught us. That love matters more than law, that partnership is stronger than power, that treating people with dignity and respect is always the right choice." The story of Lily and Archer Jensen became part of the Circle J Quotes Foundation, told and retold to each new generation. The tale of how they met, how Archer had chosen kindness when cruelty was legal, how Lily had chosen to trust when fear would have been justified, how together they had built something that lasted far beyond their own lives. In the years that followed, the Circle J remained in the Jensen family, passed down through the generations. The house was expanded and modernized, but the porch where Lily and Archer had spent so many evenings remained. Sacred space where their descendants still gathered to watch the sunset and remember. The fund Lily had established to help women in difficult contract situations continued as well, growing over the decades and helping hundreds of women find freedom and new starts. It became her lasting gift to others who found themselves in circumstances similar to those she had faced, proof that one person's compassion could ripple out to change many lives. The small bedroom where Lily had first slept when she arrived at the Circle J, terrified and uncertain, became something of a shrine. Samuel kept it furnished simply but comfortably, and he made sure his children and grandchildren knew its significance. "This is where your grandmother first felt safe," he would tell them. "This is where she learned that not all power is used to hurt, that some people choose kindness." The Circle J thrived through changing times, surviving economic downturns and droughts, and all the challenges that came with ranching in Wyoming. The family attributed their resilience to the foundation Lily and Archer had built, the strong partnership and shared values that had been passed down through the generations. On what would have been Lily and Archer's 50th wedding anniversary, the family gathered at the ranch for a special celebration. Though both were gone, their presence was felt in every corner of the property, in every family tradition, in the way family members treated each other with respect and love. Samuel, now an old man himself, stood at their graves on the hill and spoke to his parents as if they could hear him. "You changed our family's destiny," he said. "You took what could have been a tragedy and turned it into a love story. You taught us that the right choices made for the right reasons create something that lasts. Thank you for that. Thank you for choosing love and partnership and equality when you could have chosen something much darker." The sun set behind him, painting the sky in the brilliant colors that Wyoming was famous for, the same colors Lily and Archer had watched together countless times. And though they were gone, their love story lived on, a testament to the transforming power of kindness, the strength of partnership, and the enduring nature of true love. Their story was one of many from the Wild West, but it was unique in its tenderness, in the choice to build up rather than control, to partner rather than dominate. In a time and place often characterized by violence and hardship, Lily and Archer Jensen had created something beautiful, a love that elevated them both and blessed everyone it touched. And that love continued to echo through the generations, a permanent part of the Circle J and the family that called it home, proof that even in the hardest circumstances, kindness and respect and true partnership can create something lasting and lovely, something that outlives the people who created it and becomes part of the land itself, woven into every sunset, every spring morning, every moment of joy and connection. The end of their story was not an ending at all, but a beginning that continued to unfold with each new generation. Each child who learned about the grandmother who had been given dignity when law said she deserved none. The grandfather who had chosen to be a partner when he could have been a master. And the love they built together that proved stronger than any contract, any circumstance, any hardship they faced.